Then you'll respond. Here's what God said to Moses, who told you to stand still. If you trust me, then keep on marching. Where can I march to? He said, stretch forth your faith. Stretch forth your hand. As you begin to stretch forth your faith, as you begin to stretch forth your hand over the water, then you'll see it part. It's then, when you begin to walk out, it's then that I'll pave the way. It's when you begin to take the first step, it's then that I'll meet you.
Yes, amen.
But let me give you an example. Sister Beth said this a while ago. She said that when the doctor gave her that report the first time around, she was terrified, and I get it. I understand. She said, I didn't even want to whisper, and I certainly wasn't going to sing. Standing at the water's edge, and Pharaoh's chariots rolling in the background. You can't sing. Don't do any further damage. But the problem is, God's given you a gift.
Amen. Amen.
You stand at the water's edge, and God says, I want you to sing. I can't sing right now, God. I can't use my talents right now in this season, God. I'll obey, but not now, God. And we stand at the water's edge, and that delay allows the enemy to get closer and closer and closer. Did you not hear her testimony where she got her breakthrough? It's when she chose, I'm going to sing anyway. I'm going to step out on faith anyway. Amen. It's when you begin to trust God and you step out on faith. We can go back to the doctor, and the doctor says, I don't have any good news for you. That's all right. I've already got the good news. Amen. My God is a healer. I know His name, Jehovah Rapha. I know you can't tell me anything different than that, but my hope was never in you. Shame on me for putting it in Egypt to begin with, because God brought me out of that.
Amen.
Hear me this morning. God may not heal you the way you want to be healed, but I promise you God will heal you.
Yes.
Amen. In heaven there is no sickness, there is no sorrow, there's no pain, there's no death, there's no more crying.
Amen. Yes.
Pastor, I don't want to wait till heaven. Oh, you'd rather live in Egypt. God, if I can't have it my way, it was better for me to be in Egypt, where at least then I didn't have the devil breathing down my neck. We have people that pursue the wrong relationships because they don't trust that God will send the right man or God will send the right woman. And they hear Pharaoh's chariots in the background, your biological clock is ticking, or nobody will ever want you. After all the things you've been through, no, who's going to love you? You hear Pharaoh's chariot, you keep on marching where God leads you.
Amen.
He says, stretch forth your rod, stretch forth your hand over the sea, and divide it, and the children of Israel go on dry ground through the midst of the sea. What God was saying is, you can't go back to Egypt. Quit thinking about Egypt. Let me know a minute. Why would God bring them to the Red Sea? Because if He brought them any other place, they would have certainly wound back up in Egypt at some point in their life. When He brought them by way of the Red Sea, it was a place of drawing a line in the sand. You'll go one of two places. You'll either go back today, or you'll keep marching forward. When He brought them to the Red Sea, it was a place that they would choose to obey God or to stay. God had brought them out of Egypt, but that mindset of Egypt was still ingrained in them. It was in their flesh. It was in everything that they knew and everything that they did. This is why sometimes people will come to church and they'll get involved in the services and they'll show up every week, but they still hang out in the bar on Saturday. They've lived in Egypt for so long, they think that they can still go back to Egypt anytime they want. After all, God's already blessed them. God did something. No, God's saying, I'll deliver you from that and I'll be your God. I'll set you free and I'll take you to this place of promise. I'll take you to a place of relationship. I'll take you to a place that you've heard the preacher talk about, but never really realized in your own life. God wants to know you in a personal and intimate way.
Yes. Amen.
This morning, God wants you to be so filled with the Spirit that you walk every day of your life being empowered by Him.
Amen.
Even when you get bad news, even when you're in the valley. Listen, that doesn't mean you're not going to have bad days. David had many bad days. The Psalms are full of poetry about how bad the days are and yet how good God still is. Stretch your faith. You got to stop thinking about Egypt. Stop talking about Egypt. What God was doing, He said, I'm trying to close that chapter in your life. But God, I've got so many memories in Egypt. Sure you do. Your future's not in your past, though, is it? Like the little old corny saying, you know, some of us are driving down the road, looking in the rearview mirror. Can't figure out why we keep having wrecks and making a mess of things. You can't go forward while you're looking.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
Part of the Red Sea, verse 21 of chapter 14. It says, Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night. He made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. And the children of Israel went into the midst of the sea. Upon dry ground, the waters were a wall. Look at that, a wall unto them on their right and on their left. And the Egyptians pursued and went in after them in the midst of the sea, even all of Pharaoh's horses, all of them, all his chariots and his horsemen. And it came to pass that in the morning watch, the Lord looked into the host of the Egyptians through the pillar of fire and of cloud. And He troubled the host of the Egyptians, and took off their chariot wheels, and they drove them heavily, so that the Egyptians said, Let us flee from the face of Israel, for the Lord fights for them against the Egyptians. And the Lord said to Moses, Stretch out your hand over the sea, and the waters that may come again upon the Egyptians, and upon their chariots, and upon their horsemen. Moses stretched forth his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to its strength. And when morning appeared, the Egyptians had fled against it, and the Lord overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea. And the waters returned and covered their chariots and the horsemen and the host of Pharaoh that came into the sea after them. And there remained, look at this, there remained not so much as even one of them. But the children of Israel walked upon dry land in the midst of the sea, and the waters were a wall to them on their right hand and on their left. Thus the Lord saved Israel that day out of the hand of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians dead upon the seashore. God brought them by way of the Red Sea on purpose, but hear me this morning. The most difficult decision that these people would make was when God asked them to actually step out.
Yes.
I want you to think about this for a moment. Because you can't read this the way that we are often notorious to read it and say, wow, that's awesome. If God parted the Red Sea for me, man, I'd walk out into it too. If God made a way where there is no way, man, I'd know that was God and I'd walk in it. The most difficult decision they made was when God parted the Red Sea and said, now step out. The waters were a wall on the right hand and a wall on their left hand. Now if God stacked the waters up 20, 40, 60, 80 foot high, imagine like this, walking downtown Columbia. You walk down Main Street, and you look up at the buildings to your left and to your right, and you imagine that that was a wall of water. And a wall of water on this side. And maybe as you look out in it, you see a great white shark turn his belly, and you see his fins right there in the side of it. And then God says, go ahead. Walk on to the other side. It was easy when we left Egypt. Pharaoh kicked us out. Dumped gold at our feet. It was exciting when we left Egypt. Panic set in when we got to the water. When you made a way, that was really exciting, but then it got real quick. Now God said, you trust me? The most difficult decision they would have to make was to step out. The Egyptians weren't coming to kill them. They just wanted their slaves back. If I don't go anywhere, I know what waits for me. If I just throw the white flag of surrender, I know that I'll really never reach my destiny, but I know I'll be all right in Egypt. I'm going to be okay. But see, the problem is, God, if I get out there, if I even get 100 yards out there, what if the waters come crashing down? What if you don't take care of me, God? What if I get out there, Lord, and you don't show up, God? What if I I put myself out there, Lord? What if I trust you by faith and things don't work out? Some of you today, that's where you're at. You're standing there at the water's edge. God's made a way. God's called you.
Mm-hmm.
But you stand there because you're terrified. Because you realize, see, there's a lot going on in this scene. The most powerful scenes in all the Bible, it's not so much that God split the Red Sea, but it's that they had enough faith to step out into the middle of it.
Yes.
Because most of us would have been like,
Mm-hmm.
send Moses. Moses, you and God are close, right? You get on the other side and maybe we'll follow you. We'll see how this thing works out for you. Because the image we have in our minds sometimes is that when the waters opened up, they just ran into it because they were so excited not to be killed by the Egyptians. The Egyptians were not coming to kill them. They just want their slaves back. Mm-hmm. The same life you had before you started serving God, the same life you had before you started trusting God, and this whole nonsense of having enough faith in God that you can actually follow Him, if you just come back, everything will be the same.
Mm.
God called you to more than that.
That's right.
Listen to me this morning. The most difficult decision you'll make in all your life is to step out in radical obedience to God's Word.
Yes.
At some point, just like Peter, He's going to call you to step out of the boat. But God, that doesn't make any sense. You know what happens to people that step out of the boat? They sink.
Mm.
Peter didn't sink, not initially. And even when he took his eyes off Jesus and began to sink, you know, you should sink really quick, and yet Jesus was there to catch him before he went under. And Jesus was still walking on the water. You realize that the sea shouldn't part anyway. He's saying, Pastor Mark, you can trust God. But do you? Stand with me all over the house this morning.